Right. Hey guys, Blood Moon Bobby here. There's not going to be any script or notes for this video. It's just going to be giving some thoughts. The day of recording today is October 5th, 2017, which is the 6th anniversary of Steve Jobs' death, the Apple co-founder's death. So, this is a very kind of interesting. I don't know if I'd call it touchy, but still interesting thing to talk about, at least as far as my reactions and thoughts. Not to sound egotistical, but I'm just saying it's weird. I remember I first got the news. It was October 5th, 2011. I just came back from my high school cross country practice, and my dad tells me, "Hey, I heard on the radio Steve Jobs died." And that really shocked me. I didn't believe him at first. I knew about Jobs' kidney transplant, and it's funny. I thought, he would have. Um, I remember my friend at the time. My friend and I. We were both Apple fanboys back in the day. He's not even into Apple anymore, and I've tried to move on from that. And he said, what did he say? He thought that since Jobs had the kidney transplant, he was going to live for at least another 10 years. So that's why I didn't worry about it as much. Um, but yeah, sure enough, I go on my mom's laptop, I look up Steve Jobs, and yeah, it said that he passed away. In fact, interestingly enough, from what I remember, he actually passed around the same time as I was getting ready for my cross country practice. And I remember it was raining that day. It was all just a really sad coincidence. Not to tie in like my practice, but I was just saying it was a really sad day. It was easily the saddest day I had in high school, just because it was the first time somebody's death really hit me. Like, I've had grandparents pass away when I was younger, but at the time, Steve passed on. I might be calling him Steve just in and out this video, only because I know the Apple employees like to call each other by their first name. So, I'm not making this video be super journalistic. This is just me giving my thoughts. So, where was I? I'm sorry if I go on some tangents, but it was, yeah, just me being at age 14. It was the first time somebody's death really hit me pretty hard. I remember the day after he passed, I actually remember crying at the dinner table, and, my mom had to come, like, tell me, it's alright, it's cool. Well, it's not cool that he's dead, but, that it's okay, things will be fine. And I remember that weekend I went to the Apple store in Costa Mesa because the one that's closest to me hadn't been built yet. And I remember leaving a note that just basically said the innovations, the various things that Steve Jobs helped to create, and thanking him. And that's what this video is meant to do too. Because here's the thing, I know it's really weird how the death of, a businessman, the Apple founder, could hit me really personally. And I remember when it happened, I saw a lot of YouTubers, whether it be John Rittinger from Techno Buffalo and even Brian Tong from Apple, and it hit them very personally. And it's weird. I remember sometime after the passing, I told my friend about this, a different friend, and he told me, he's a businessman. Why would that death hit you really hard? So, and the best way I can put it is, even though back then I consider myself to be an Apple fanboy, and today I'm much more open minded. I feel like even if, Steve were to pass away today, it would still hit me pretty much just as hard. I mean, not just because, even with the problems Apple has, I still like them as a company, and I still can acknowledge their innovations. I think that's just it. Like, Jobs brought so much. Just the idea of, think about like what he's brought to the world, if you will. I mean, the first really mainstream computer to have, a graphical user interface, and the first hard digital music player we took seriously, the first smartphone to use a multi-touch screen. And let's see, he also helped Apple. He pioneered retail stores, at least making Apple retail stores the way they are, where it's not just you go in and shop. It's that you come in, you test drive. They don't even really like promote buying products. I mean, they do, but it's more about, as they put it, you should come to shop and return to learn. Which I must add, 90% of the time when I go in an Apple store, I don't even buy stuff. I just go in there and play with the new toys. So when you think about it that way, that's the best way I can put just the scope of what he was able to do. And if you even think about it, but yes, Xerox PARC had the graphical user interface before Apple, but if it wasn't for the Macintosh, which I consider Jobs' biggest, his biggest invention, his most influential invention, there wouldn't be a Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows XP, or Vista, or 7, or 10 the way we know it, in terms of, instead of, because, before, the Macintosh, if you were to use, like, an Apple II or a Commodore PET, you wouldn't have this, like, graphical interface where you had folders and programs. You would just be put into this sort of, dark space, the place they call, the prompt into the basic language. I mean, could you imagine doing that? Like, I know nowadays they're pushing STEM and stuff, but not everybody's a computer programmer. Like, the people that I work with, they're not computer programmers. Much of my family is not computer programmers. They're only able to use it because of how simple, a graphical user interface is. And even me, I am not very good at programming. I tried to learn it, and I need that GUI. So when you think about it, the Mac set the course for the personal computer when it came out in '84, and even before then, like, Apple had the first really successful personal computer with the Apple II, which that was more Woz's idea, but it was still Apple. It was still, some even credit. I remember watching a interview they had with one of the Apple II engineers, and he said that the design, at least the mindset in design, was all Steve Jobs, in terms of it being this kind of compact, sleek-looking computer instead of being this big, scary, intimidating machine. So, yeah, what else can I really say? I mean, in fact, I should also point out that the first computer I ever had in my house was a Mac. I don't remember which one it was. It was before OS 10. That's all I can remember. But I should really point that out. And what else was there? I mean, I know Apple by no means isn't a perfect company. And even these days, now that Tim Cook, who I still like him as a CEO of Apple, I don't really think it's possible for anybody to innovate as much as Jobs did. I mean, yes, I know you could say Apple's not innovative anymore. They're just going off the competition. I mean, if you look at the iPhone 10, what are they putting? They're putting an OLED screen, which Jobs would have never done, because OLEDs tend to be more saturated. So, but I honestly don't think there's anybody that could run Apple nowadays that would have had the influence Steve Jobs had. He was just, I don't know. I mean, like, how am I supposed to know how an innovator works? I mean, it's kind of like what Bach said, the musician Bach, where he said, I think he said something where genius, like 10% of genius is talent, and that's the thing we don't know, because it comes out of that person's brain. I mean, just in terms of, you had a guy who was able, like, I'm going back to talking about, Steve Jobs, where he was able to foresee a lot. Like, he saw the possibilities of where this, new technology can go. I mean, if you think about it, back in the 70s, why would you need a computer? Can't you just, if I wanted to write, like a spreadsheet, couldn't I just get a spreadsheet out and, write it down? But he saw the possibility of this machine with the Mac. It was able to store, not only store them, but it could, you could actually type it out and it would look much, much better than, um, than if you wrote it down. And like, I have really sloppy handwriting, so yeah, just, I can't really think of too many people who have, that level of foresight, being able to see the future. And it's weird. I think it can be best put. Jobs did an interview with 60 Minutes. I remember he said that he thought that the personal computer, had still a long way to go. And this was like in the early 2000s. I mean, it's hard to say what he had in mind. I know I heard once that the last product Jobs had influence on was the iPhone 5S. Don't quote me on that. That's just what I heard. But, it's interesting to know what, could he have foreseen? I mean, he always pushed how, when you make something wonderful, you go on and make something better. So, that's something I just can't explain. I don't think anybody could really explain. I'm not even sure if there's people in Apple that could explain that, That's all in the mind of somebody who is able to, see the future as far as being from the perspective of the present. So, yeah, I mean, I think it even just shows, how much of an impact if he had. If you're able to say, even if he didn't invent it, it was inspired by him. Like, if you were to look at even, like, your Windows PC or your Android phone, those were inspired off the success of the iPhone, So, you know, God, I mean, I'm sorry again if I'm stammering a lot. I just really want this to be as authentic and as raw a, tribute video as possible. So, um, what else can I say? I mean, in the case of the iPhone, instead of, using, a numbered keypad or this really clunky interface, here you have, I don't think you can see it. You have this like interface of tiles, and keep in mind, this is, the interface of, smartphones today, where you have this, kind of magical piece of glass. I don't want to use the word magical, where you have tiles, here, and you just tap on them. You don't have to go through menus, just, go in, use your camera, take a picture. And keep in mind, Android isn't that far off. I mean, I even remember when Google acquired the Android operating system, they actually they redid it so that it would, use a icon-based interface, just like the iPhone. So I think that just comes to show, I mean, yes, Android's a competitor, but it comes to show that if you could credit at least the inspiration, even on another platform, that just shows you the breadth of what Jobs was able to do. Like, I'm really trying my best to like tell you guys, like, how much of an impact this guy had. I mean, just through, and also how he was able to, impact so many industries, like not just the tech field, but even like movies. Like, he became the CEO of Pixar, and he helped out Pixar with making their movies. And as much as I would like to see both CG and traditionally animated films, Jobs was able to bring a new medium. Like, he brought Pixar. He helped with Pixar's computer animated movies. Before he got back to Apple. So yeah, I'm just hoping like I can like just show you like how much of an impact this guy has. What more can I say? I mean, I know Jobs was by no means a perfect person. There's a lot of things, even especially now that as I've gotten older, that I would never try doing, even though Jobs did. I mean, look at like, especially, I have nothing against hippies. I like listening to the Beatles. I like listening to the Rolling Stones. But look at like his lifestyle. He had this like vegan diet and had really long hair. I heard like he used to have hair where like his hair would go to the waist down, and he would never bathe because he thought that his vegan diet didn't, made it so he didn't have to take baths. I mean, there's things like that that made me cringe, and I've also heard stories where And Jobs has even admitted it, where he's had a bit of a temper. Like, I've heard that his favorite saying when he didn't like something was, "This is shit." You know? Like, he was probably the person that, like, opened my eyes into the kind of, you know, tough, rude reality of the workplace. It's weird because when you see Jobs on stage, like, he could be, very to the point and a strong speaker, but he seemed like, a nice enough person, especially in his older days. But, he would, like, I remember when Walter Isaacson was writing his biography, he told Isaacson there would be times where people would tell him he's full of shit, and then he would just, come back and saying he's full of shit. And then there was this other person who tried to interview him, and just, he would say, this is terrible, this is fucking stupid, and just, yeah. But I think from my experiences of having to deal with angry people, which, yes, it's unpleasant whenever they get pissed off, but, just because they're angry doesn't mean they can't have a impact. I'm actually going to silence my iPhone, so it doesn't, ring, throughout this video. So, um, God, I mean, what else, what was I saying about angry people? But, it was because, like, the reason Jobs was such a pissy person was, he was a perfectionist. I mean, would I work alongside Jobs? No, 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 no. I've dealt with too many pissed off people to deal with him. Would I interview him? If he was still around, would I have liked to have shook his hand? Of course. I remember, when I was, a diehard Apple fanboy, being in, like, high school, saying I've wanted to shake the guy's hand and, like, talk with him. I mean, but yeah, I think that's just what struck me the hardest when he passed, was that now I would never get the chance to see him. I mean, yes, I know, now he's a spirit, but, I don't really know. Would he want to, like, listen to, like, this dumb kid from California? I think I'm just one, Apple, like, admirer in a sea of so many people that include, like, developers and even, suits. Not just people that work at Apple, but, companies that work with Apple, So I don't know if I'm, like, that good enough to earn his level of respect. And just, yeah, even though, like, I feel like Jobs, like, I've tried to, like, take a lot of his wisdom, especially. And the thing is, when he passed, that's the thing. Whenever, like, somebody famous passes, I like looking into them to see what have they left behind. Because as the old saying goes, even if a person passes, what lives is what they brought to this world. So I remember looking into things like Jobs' Stanford speech, which is one of the most inspiring speeches I've ever seen. Even if you're not a techie person, I strongly recommend watching it. You can go watch it on Stanford's YouTube channel. Of him saying, don't be afraid by dogma and don't let the noises of other people affect you. I think that was the first time, after hearing that, where I realized, hey, I can be an independent person. So I think that just further shows not just that what he was able to bring to the tech and movie industries, but a lot of his philosophy you could apply to. I feel his philosophy you could apply to a lot of people. I think what hit me the hardest with Steve was, the message he had in that Stanford speech. Like, it was the first time I really, truly believe, like, I didn't take his Stanford speech as, from a techie to, somebody who's interested in tech. I took it as, from a person who's been through a lot of shit, to, like, me, because at the time I was very unsure. My parents wanted me to be, like, some kind of doctor, and I didn't want to be, a doctor, because I was terrible at math, and I just didn't like being around people who were aspiring to be doctors. If my cousins watch this video, please don't take that as offense. I'm just saying I like doing what I do. But yeah, it was watching that speech. It was the first time I realized, hey, I'm an independent person. And for the years, I mean, I took his speech to heart. I mean, when I first wanted to be a photographer, and now I'm going into social media and PR, even though I don't want to be a computer scientist anymore, Jobs, that speech still transcended through the different avenues I went down, And that's another part of that speech where he said, you have to trust that the dots will connect. And, here I am. I'm about, you know, next May I'll be graduating college, even 6 years on, even after his death, I still like have faith in that message. I mean, look at like Jobs' history. He didn't like even when he got into tech as a in his late teens, he didn't say I'm going to start a computer company. He did not say that. You know he just knew he had a passion for computers and good design, and which I gotta say, I'm really glad. That's another part of Steve glad I didn't take up, where he just went to college for one semester. I'm glad that I'm gonna be able to get through all 4 years and still live through much of Jobs' message of being independent and not being afraid of what others say. And I still wish I had that level of confidence. Maybe not being rude to people the way Jobs was. I'm not a person who's very good at saying, you're doing this all wrong, this is terrible, so I wish I at least had the level of confidence to say, my idea is really great, please listen to me. And even to this day, I have a lot of trouble telling people all that. I just have to have a lot of faith that the person will believe in me. And, there's jerky people out there, I think that's the other thing we can all take from Jobs is, he's had to deal with a lot of people who didn't like him, who thought he was crazy, and just, that's just a reality you have to suck up. There's gonna be, assholes in the workplace, just like I deal with, people nowadays. Even like, people in family I don't disagree with, I guess I kind of feel like I'm a little bit. I don't want to say I feel like Steve Jobs. I am not him. I am not one trillionth of that man. I don't. I wished, but I never will be. Jobs. But I just wished I had that level of confidence. To say, please listen to me, because I like listening to people who've had more experience than me. I just wish they listened to this kid who had a couple new ideas. you know. I think that's what I was getting to. Like, not only did Jobs, leave an impact, on the tech field, but I feel like a lot of people, especially people who don't have much confidence that I do, can take, from him. Maybe not just, like, you don't have to be, like, somebody who likes Apple. I have some of my best friends, even, like, show the cross. No, please, I don't want an Apple product. There's a lot of things from Jobs that I think we can take and learn from him, So, do I have anything else to say as far as, I think philosophically, like, Jobs was the first, like, philosopher I took seriously, just as far as, he wasn't only a person that you took, a lot of things from him, from the tech field. These are things you could, take from him, spiritually. Like, he was just at least for me, the first person. And I think it helped, like, I got my feet wet, like, learning about Jobs. When he was alive, I mainly knew him as a tech guy, but I learned through the years that, like, deep down, like, he was a very passionate person who just believed in himself. He thought he was special, but he still, like, learned from a lot of people. And something you guys might not know is, according to the Walter Isaacson biography he wrote on Jobs, he learned, if you're wondering where did he learn to not just to design the front of his Apple products beautifully, but also the back beautifully, he got that from his dad, Paul Jobs, who taught him, like, they were once painting a fence, and he taught his son Steve, you got to paint the back of the fence just as beautifully as the front, just to show that you care. And, I think that philosophy lives on in Apple. I mean, look at the iPhone SE. Yes, it's a dated design, and the screen protector I've been is cracked, but it's like, you have this really simple design on the front, if it wasn't covered by my fingerprints. But look at the back. You have this interesting, top and bottom, the glass top and bottom, and you have this aluminum metal. So, I mean, yeah, and just over the last few years, I feel like some people will tell you I try way too hard to show that I'm passionate. That's only because, I want my product, I shouldn't say product, my projects, because I'm a photographer, I'm a filmmaker, I am trying to learn social media, um, and just, I really try to show, as much passion as I can. I don't want to say I want to show as much passion as Steve Jobs. I don't think I'm capable of that. But, I try to show as much passion, not just because, I like Jobs, but, I've had people in my past that think I don't care. And it's not that I don't care, it's just, it's difficult for me sometimes to do things. So, yeah, I mean, Jobs really inspired me, not just, spiritually, well, not just in the tech field, but also, spiritually. So I think that's why I put a lot of faith in my camera batteries about to date in him, not just because, I liked his tech, but I think he had a lot of philosophy that people could learn from. So, yeah, so, I mean, my history with Apple, I've had a Mac when I was a kid, and the Mac was where I learned to use a computer. I mean, I learned how to use a computer. I preferred Mac over Windows, even, especially when I got into middle school and I had to use Macs to type up like my broadcasting voiceovers and do my videos. It was just a lot simpler to learn. So I just want to say, and now I have a MacBook Pro 15-inch Retina, which even though it's 5 years old, it's still it's still very good at editing full HD videos. So I just wanted to get that out there before my battery dies and to get as much out. Please, I hope, Steve, you're doing well in heaven. And even though Apple, it's not as great a place as it could be, but it's still in a pretty good place. I think Tim Cook is doing a good job. I can't really blame him. I mean, as much as I want him to be more innovative, I still respect what Steve told him when Cook became CEO, and that just do what's right. Don't ever question what Steve Jobs does. And I think it really comes to show, even though Steve was a very argumentative guy, I think deep down he still respected and understood that, this is Tim's company now. So, yeah, so I just wanted to get that out there before my camera dies. Actually, I wanted to leave you guys with the one of my favorite TV commercials of all time, and that is the Crazy Ones Apple commercial, only because, one, I think it's a very inspiring commercial, and also, even though I don't think Steve would have liked it, I personally would have put him on this among the people shown in this commercial. So enjoy. Please rest in peace, Steve.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.